The title of her oration is Our Rights in the Constitution. Whenever you're ready.
Nearly 250 years ago, something happened that would change the course of modern history. Something that was unlike any government that had come before. Something that would shape America's future for generations. The founders of the United States wrote a constitution. But the mere idea of a constitution was nothing revolutionary. Constitutions had existed for thousands of years before America was born, even as far back as the Greek city-states. What set this particular constitution apart was something much more revolutionary. This constitution guaranteed rights to every single one of its citizens. This constitution recognized that there are certain freedoms and liberties that inherently belong to everyone, that no government can take away, and that it should be the job of the government to protect and promote these rights, not to undermine them. We call the codification of this idea the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to our United States Constitution. For years, these amendments have protected the freedoms and liberties of generations of Americans. But our rights are not immune to attack. It's the natural tendency of governments, of people in power, to want to take more power. This necessitates taking freedoms away from the people. Our rights are more like fragile plants than pillars set in stone. Like plants, they require constant care and nurture. Like plants, when neglected, weeds quickly spring up and destroy them. And like plants, when ignored, like most of the potted plants in my house, they quickly die. The sad fact is, today, our rights are under attack. Many of these attacks are subtle, as our freedom to speak and worship, to bear arms and assemble freely, are quietly undermined. Yet some of these attacks have become increasingly blatant. Just this past March, former Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens called for a complete repeal of the Second Amendment, abolishing any citizen's right to own a firearm. He called the founders' concerns of a tyrannical government or renegade military forcibly violating the liberties of citizens, quote, a relic of the 18th century, end quote. Our rights are under attack, and they need to be protected. And who is the group to whom this responsibility falls? The founders made it clear whose duty it is to defend the rights and liberties of Americans. Thomas Jefferson said, quote, our liberty can never be safe, but in the hands of the people themselves. It is our duty as citizens to defend our rights and liberties. And this is not an impossible task. We can stand up for our rights, and we can succeed. Today, I want to urge you to defend your rights, as codified by the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution. Defending our rights takes 3 important steps. First, we must know our rights. Secondly, we must speak up for them. And finally, we must exercise them. First, defending our rights requires that we know them. This should go without saying. Yet in America today, many citizens don't even know what rights they have. A survey conducted by the Annenberg Public Policy Center in 2017 found that 37% of Americans surveyed couldn't name a single right guaranteed to them by the First Amendment. An additional 48% could only name freedom of speech. It's impossible for people to protect something when they don't even know what it is. How can Americans react properly to Justice Stevens' call to repeal the Second Amendment when they don't even know what the Second Amendment is? How can we know when our freedom to worship is being encroached upon, when we never even knew we had that freedom in the first place? The fact is, an ignorant people is a people ripe for tyranny. As founder John Adams said, quote, liberty cannot be preserved without general knowledge among the people, end quote. Today, that knowledge is sorely lacking. The first step to defending our rights is reclaiming that knowledge. So read your Constitution Read your Bill of Rights. Memorize them. When we, the people, know our rights, we can know when they're being encroached upon and when we need to stand up and defend them. But just knowing our rights isn't enough. The second important step to defending our rights is speaking up for them. Speaking up for your rights can take a variety of forms. It can be as simple as writing your local representative to let them know you value your rights and encouraging them to support legislation that does the same. It can be educating other Americans on what their rights are, on why they're important, and on the duty of every citizen to defend them. It can be speaking up for those who don't have a voice, for those whose rights have been violated, but who are unable to share their stories. The important thing is not remaining silent, letting others know that our rights are important, that they're fragile, and that we, the people, have been charged with the solemn duty of defending them. But finally, perhaps the most important way we, the people, can defend our rights is simply by exercising them. This may sound counterintuitive, but the founders designed our rights to be, in many ways, self-sustaining. For example, when you publicly call out legislation that would violate the freedoms and liberties of citizens, you're using your right, freedom of speech, to defend your rights. When you write a letter to the editor criticizing the way things in government are being handled, that's your freedom of the press. And when you pray for the passage of legislation that would protect and promote the liberties of citizens, that's your freedom of worship. The most important tools we have to defend our rights is our rights. And when we do this, we're fighting against tyranny. After all, tyranny thrives when people don't use their rights. Tyranny is safest when not one citizen opens their mouths to speak freely, when not one citizen owns a weapon to defend themselves, when not one citizen is free to publish an article criticizing the regime. Yet we in America have the incredible privilege of being able to do all of these things. And this is why, despite the political climate today, despite the attempts by officials to take away our freedoms and liberties, I remain hopeful for America. Because we, the people, have the tools we need to defend against any encroachment of our rights and liberties. The absolute worst thing we can do is simply not use them. It's not enough to appreciate our freedom of speech. We must speak freely about the things that truly matter. It's not enough to like having freedom of the press if we never use it to share the truth that's so desperately needed. At the end of the day, the single most important way you can defend your rights is simply by exercising them. Ultimately, our rights, as enshrined in the Constitution, are an integral part of the founders' vision for our nation. Yet our rights are also fragile, and they need constant protection. We should never be the people who simply sit idly by and watch as our rights and liberties are taken from us, one by one. As Thomas Jefferson said, quote, "The price of freedom is eternal vigilance." It's a price we should all be paying. So know your rights. Speak up for them. Exercise them. It's only with vigilant citizens who are steadfastly devoted to protecting their rights and liberties that we can ensure that the next generation enjoys the freedoms we take for granted. Founder John Adams said it best, quote, "The freedoms of our country, the liberty of our civil constitution, is worth defending against all hazards. And it is our duty to defend them against all attacks."